Imagine this. It's late at night. You're a servant inside the imperial palace of Constantinople, and you see the emperor, Justinian, walking through the darkness. But what you're seeing, well, it's completely impossible. Now, this isn't the beginning of some ghost story. No, what was happening in those palace halls wasn't supernatural. It was something much, much more real and, honestly, a lot more terrifying.
What that servant was actually seeing was the waking nightmare of a man burning up with fever, an illness so devastating, a body temperature so high that in the flickering torchlight, Justinian's very form seemed to shimmer, to dissolve into the darkness.
And here's the thing. As the emperor himself was teetering on that knife's edge between life and death, so was his entire empire. What was happening inside the palace? It was just a small-scale reflection of the absolute catastrophe that was unfolding right outside the walls.
So today, we're going to talk about how an invisible killer, a silent passenger on some ordinary grain ships, managed to bring the entire Roman world to its knees, right at the absolute peak of its power.
Okay, so to really get the sheer scale of this disaster, you first have to understand just how good things were before it hit. We're in the mid-6th century, and the Emperor Justinian has this grand, ambitious plan. He calls it the Renovatio Imperii, which is just a fancy way of saying the restoration of the empire. His goal? To make Rome whole again.
And for a while there, it worked like a charm. I mean, spectacularly well. His top general, a guy named Belisarius, just steamrolls the Vandal kingdom in North Africa. And then, and this is a huge moment, he marches his troops right back into the city of Rome itself. The West was coming back into the fold.
Meanwhile, back in the capital, Constantinople, the incredible Hagia Sophia is being built, reaching for the sky. The treasury is full. Money is just pouring in. The armies are winning everywhere. It really truly looked like a brand new golden age was dawning.
But, and there's always a but, isn't there? This whole glorious project, this entire restoration, it all hinged on one single place, the massive beating heart of the empire, the city of Constantinople. And that heart, well, it had a fatal weakness.
You see, the very thing that kept the empire alive was about to become its poison. Constantinople was this huge city, and it needed a constant river of grain ships coming from Egypt just to feed everyone. But those ships weren't just carrying grain. They had stowaways, black rats, and riding on those rats were fleas, carrying an even smaller, microscopic passenger.
And in the year 541, that tiny passenger got off the boat. It slipped into the crowded streets of the capital. Unseen, unstoppable. The Great Death had arrived.
Now, of course, we know what it was. Thanks to modern science and DNA analysis, we can identify the culprit. Yersinia pestis. That's the bacterium that causes the bubonic plague. And its effects were just brutal. A crazy high fever, delirium, and these awful, painful, swollen lymph nodes, the buboes that gave the plague its name.
But here's the thing about this plague. It didn't just kill people. It killed the city itself. And the only reason we know how truly awful it was is because we have these gut-wrenching eyewitness accounts from the people who somehow managed to live through it.
Take the historian Procopius. He was there, writing from inside this dying city. And he claimed that at the plague's peak, we're talking thousands. Thousands of people were dying every single day. I mean, the scale is just impossible to wrap your head around.
Think about what that means. The entire engine of the city just stopped. Work stopped. Bakeries, markets, government offices, everything just went silent. Empty.
Those streets, once crammed with people, the busiest avenues in the biggest city in the world, they fell completely silent. The only sound left was the sound of mourning.
It was a total breakdown of society. So many people died so fast that there was literally no one left to bury the dead. They couldn't keep up. Bodies were just left in the streets, they were piled into mass graves, they were even stuffed into the city's defensive towers.
Okay, so the city is collapsing. Society itself is unraveling. Which leads to a pretty big question. What about the emperor? In the middle of all this chaos, what was happening with Justinian?
And that brings us right back to where we started, that vision of a disappearing emperor. Because the plague didn't stop at the palace gates, it got inside. Justinian himself caught it, and for weeks he was completely lost to that delirious fever. Just think about that. The newly restored Roman Empire, in its darkest hour, had no leader.
Against all odds, Justinian actually survived. He pulled through.
But the world he woke up to, it was shattered, irrevocably broken. The plague cast this long, dark shadow, and his grand dream of a restored Rome, it would never, ever emerge from it.
I mean, the damage to the empire's very structure was just immense. Let's look at the before and after. Before, you had expanding borders and a full treasury. After? Well, the tax revenue just collapsed. Why? There weren't enough people left alive to pay taxes. The farms were empty. And the armies? They couldn't find new recruits to replace their losses. The very foundation of the empire had crumbled. And what's truly terrifying is that this wasn't a one-and-done kind of thing. The plague kept coming back. It returned in waves for the next 2 centuries. Every time the population would just start to recover, another wave would hit and cut it right back down. It didn't just kill the empire's present, it completely erased its future. So, in the end, Justinian's golden age serves as this really powerful, stark reminder. This is a man who built things like the Hagia Sophia, monuments that still leave us in awe. But his greatest dream, his life's work, it wasn't destroyed by a rival empire or some invading army. It was undone by a microscopic bacterium. It just goes to show you, sometimes the fate of civilizations isn't decided by enemies at the gates, but by forces far too small to ever be seen.